Hurry up, 5 minutes. 5 minutos. Esta noche es muy caliente.
Hey, download your TikTok app today so you can have Chinese spyware in your house for free. You go down! Give me money!
Fucking future!
We're talking about a fat ass and everything, yeah.
No, I said loud ass. It's like I took a poop and it was one of those painful ones that brings a tear to your eye. What the fuck? What is wrong with you? Why do you keep on dropping the video, you son of a bitch? Alright, so we'll just do this. Twitch, I'm done with your fucking bullshit. Everything's set up. It's going fine. And then you're gonna be like, you know what I'm gonna do? You know what I'm gonna do? I'm like, what you gonna do, bitch? I'm gonna drop you. Don't drop me. That's rude. What you gonna do, bitch? I'm gonna drop. It's rude. I don't appreciate that shit. Anyways. Hi. Stay. Stay right there. Aha! Stay. And then? Oh, that's nice. That's nice, dear. We're doing the damn thing. But the question is, are you guys doing the damn thing? We doing the damn thing together? Oh. See, I thought I'd do something nice and sit in a different location. Apparently, I can't do that. Hot dog. That's right, you stay. You keep on being a good girl. Because good girls listen and they stay.
You're doing TV wrong. You thought that other TV provider was good enough. Now what?
Boom. Oh, I fucking hate you so much, YouTube. Why did you pay for the thing? That's right. We're doing the High West double rye tonight. It's nice. The double rye. Oh Jesus! See, the High West double rye. A lovely Christmas present from my boy. My boy. I don't know how we got whiskey where though. How'd we do that? We magic like that. Oh. Oh. Why y'all keep on ignoring me? We just send it to everybody, and then maybe somebody will actually respond and be like, hey, stop sending me spam about your bullshit. I'm like, alright, cool, bet I'll know for the future. Oh. That's all I got. I've invited the people I want to be here. Do those people want to be here? I don't know. That's too many questions. Too many answers. There we go. Camera, you stay. Is this the spot where we're going to read from? I don't know, maybe. Oh. Get my little mug. Get my other little mug. What do you think about that, dog, huh? It says, breaking copyright, royalty music. Peanut? What or who is Peanut? Or both?
Hello, motherfucker.
Oh! You calling the baby Peanut? Well, baby Jace isn't helpful either. What up, Blue? Hi, Ray Ray. See, we got the important stuff. The dog's here. Drinks are here. I'm here. You're here. We're all here. Your grand boy. No, don't have the grandbaby here because I'll never see you either. I'm just kidding. I know you never mind. Shush, shush. Man, if I had money, nobody would ever see my ass. Actually, my ass is probably all they'd see if I had money. But, you know, that we're talking about, like, stupid money. Somebody'd probably kill me if I had money. What do you mean Gallahan is back? You ain't sending shit over here when... I don't, baby. Now, there's some ladies I call baby girl, but that's pretty much the extent. You know, I don't, no. I ain't sending no damn baby over here. You send that return to sender. What, that I don't have babies or calling, What? Chicks like being called baby and baby girl. At my age. I don't look my age, so I can get away with more shit than someone my age in general could. And that's fine. Well, you're well adjusted. I don't deal with well adjusted. I deal with other. And that other, you will fucking lie, Blue, and you fucking know it. Maybe dealing with y'all's asses got me looking my age. I don't look my damn age. Y'all a fucking lie. Shit, I ain't looked my age since I passed like 12 or some shit. Oh, look my damn age. You turn a half a century this year and you damn look like Santa Claus. You look like what's his face from Violent Night. I don't know what the actor's name. I look 40 something. I do not look 40 something. You a hater, Ray Ray. I'm to the age where I should be easily able to take care of daddy issues, but I can't. Oh, what good is having all your teeth? No, I got my wisdom teeth removed, so there's that. The wisdom teeth are gone. I think the wisdom went with it if I had any at any point. I don't know. So this guy. For chapter 1 guy, he admitted to 139 kills and got convicted of 138, and he's suspected of at least 400. Bro, he might be free right now, or free soon, because they have like a maximum limit of 30 days no matter what your crime is, because that's how corrupt the government was. Well, see, the thing is, I never heard of the dude before. I read that first chapter, 28 pages in large print, and I quit, because I was just like, this shit was heavy. I never heard of this dude. They mentioned 3 guys in the first couple pages. Well, he's suspected of killing 400 or more because of the span of his torturous murder spree. It was mostly young boys, but it was sexual and it was sadomasochistic as well. Mostly masochistic. Well, whatever. No, not it was sadistic. Yeah. Anyways, Luis Alfredo Garavito Cubillos. Bro, this guy's a monster and a fucking half. But see, then they mentioned two other guys. One with 110 confirmed, and the suspicion he killed 110 more. And then the other one killed at least 72. He was born in Colombia. Like, what the hell? What? How have I never heard of any of these guys? Well, because they're in South America? Like, I'm sick and tired of hearing about Charles Manson and Richard Ramirez and all these other guys that have, like, sub 10 kills and, like, oh... Well, I mean, you know, plausible deniability and the ability to separate yourself from the facts that you just got to have that air of separation. I've never killed anyone that didn't have it coming. No, I left too many people free to keep on offending others. But, you know, offense is not a good enough reason to kill. Or is it? I don't know. It depends on the severity of the offense. Where are we at on that page? Oh, Chapter 2. Eric Edgar Cook, the Night Caller. The Night Caller. Anybody separate these nuts? Well, I mean, lick my balls. Both of you are fucking children. It's okay. I love you guys. Thanks for tuning in. Something about Mary. Ugh. I mean, just because it's Busk and bourbon doesn't mean it has to be just bourbon and bourbon. Fucking 12-year-olds, both of you. It's okay. I'm like 8. It's fine. I mean, I remember the first time I heard... I don't remember the exact time, but I know the time period when I first heard these nuts and shit like that. I'm drinking High West Double Rye. It was a Christmas present from my boy. And I didn't get him shit but grief. Oh. You was in 8th grade? Oh, you distinctly remember? I just remember the general time period. I don't remember the grade. I was probably... Yeah, middle school-ish, something like that. Maybe. Because it hadn't spread as far as Bama before we moved back to Europe. Yeah, I probably heard it somewhere around middle school. And I just thought it was dumb. That was around the time of Zubaz and Hypercolor and slap bracelets and all that other dumb shit. In the early 90s. And then I hated the whole, what was it, cross colors? They started, I don't know if they were licensed, I doubt it, but, you know, they started hip-hopifying the Warner Brothers characters. Oh, God, what a time to be alive for weird fashion trends. I mean, at least it wasn't the 80s, but it just felt like they just wanted to keep on going. Goddamn slap bracelets. You don't even know about that, dog. You've only been around since like 2018 or so. Oh, you guys were so cool. No doubt. No doubt. Oh. Well, at least that was before the whole, was it the puka shell necklaces and the chokers and Manic Panic. But that was like a mid to late 90s kind of thing. Yeah. You guys were cool. I would have taken you guys to lunch or something. I don't know. Yeah, I was that friend because, you know, I had jobs and shit and money. My friends were mostly bums. They live their own lives. And they're still almost in the same situation they were then. That's not my business. Who's illiterate? Oh my God, what's up with all this fuck off shit? We wrote cool. What? The fuck are you guys talking about? Who's literate? Reading is fundamental. Well, you know. Okay, so chapter 2. Eric Edgar Cook, the Night Caller. See, Richard Ramirez was a Night Stalker. You poo? He said Geordie. LeVar Burton, damn it, you uncultured swine. Australia Day. Celebrated on 26 January each year, is a national holiday on which inhabitants of the land down under mark the anniversary of the arrival of the first fleet of British ships in 1788. It is generally a joyous event, and in 1963 it was especially sweet. Australia was in the middle of an economic boom. Prime Minister Robert Menzies had been in power since 1949, and no one in the country had ever heard of Eric Edgar Cook. Today he is remembered as the Night Caller, and the murderous rampage on which he embarked that night is often cited as marking the end of an age of innocence. The Bill guy? What Bill guy? You're not talking about Bill Nye the Science Guy, because that was like a mid-90s thing. In Perth, on the southwest coast of Australia, few people locked their doors at night in the 1960s. Crime rates were mercifully low, and violent crime practically unheard of. Although almost 2 million people live there today, it remains one of the most remote cities on Earth, some 2,150 kilometers, 1,335 miles away, from the next nearest major city of Adelaide. Such isolation fosters a strong sense of community, and in 1963 the people of Perth believed that serial killers only operated far out to the east or south. Their quiet, harmonious city was different. A haven of safety. Gunfire at around 2 a.m. on 27 January 1963 shattered that illusion. Bill guy, are you talking about the conjunction function series? The I'm Just a Bill on Capitol Hill? Is that the Bill you're talking about? You gotta be specific now. You can't just be like, remember the Bill guy? Or is it a different Bill you're talking about? Is there a third Bill? There's a lot of Bills. There's Bill Cosby. Okay. January is the height of summer in Australia. And in 1963, as usual in Perth, it was sweltering. The sea breeze is known as the Fremantle Doctor for the relief it provides from the searing heat. Although it was now the early hours of the morning, many had stayed out to enjoy the holiday. One of them, a married businessman named Nicholas August, was the first to be shot. Well, it's not the Bill on Capitol Hill. Well, fuck if I know. He was having an affair with 40-year-old Rowena Driscoll, then called Rowena Reeves, who was also hit by the same bullet. Nicholas had noticed a man watching as the lovers drank together in a parked car outside the Cottesloe Civic Centre. Speaking his mind, as most Australian blokes are wont to do, he suggested to the man that he might want to peace off. In response, the man raised a .22 rifle and fired. I mean, you know. The bullet passed through Nicholas's neck into Rowena's wrist. Nicholas sped off as the mystery gunman fired at them again. Thanks to a different Fremantle doctor, this one at the local hospital, they both escaped with their lives. Well, you should have mentioned that you were talking about a singing cartoon. That would have been a lot easier than just the Bill guy. Rude. What I think conjunction function was like from the 70s, and you know they just kept on recirculating it throughout the 80s and 90s. I mean, quality entertainment doesn't get worse through age and time. If it was good then, it should be good now. Okay, so just around the corner on Broome Street, the 29-year-old accountant, Brian Weir, was probably close enough to hear the shot. Moments later, Eric Cook climbed onto a nearby garage roof opposite Weir's house, took aim and shot him in the head through a set of open doors. Weir was in a coma for 6 months and was left blind in one eye, deaf in one ear, paralyzed and brain damaged by the attack. He died 3 years later after bullet fragments that had lodged in his brain caused a seizure. Cook had not yet finished his murderous rampage. 18-year-old student John Sturkey was shot in the head later, the same night as he dozed with his head toward the open veranda of his boarding house. Murderous rampage? None of these guys had died yet. And like the shopkeep didn't die till a couple of years later. Man. His housemate was woken by his groans but thought he was having a bad dream until she discovered him lying in a pool of blood. Then retired grocer George Walmsley, 55, suffered a similar fate, gunned down as he answered the bell of his front door in the next street. His wife and daughter found him on the doorstep unconscious with a bullet hole in the center of his forehead. Both of these last two victims died of their wounds. The banner headline of the West Australian newspaper on 28 January 1963 brought word of the carnage to horrified people of Perth. Gunman still at large, 2 kills, injures 3. As is often the case with serial murders, one avid reader who pored over every detail of the coverage was the man responsible for the random slayings, Eric Edgar Cook. The West Australian was his favorite paper, and he had used the information in its pages to select victims in the past. Unbeknownst to Perth, Cook was by this time no stranger to murder. Well, we're finding out things, aren't we? Early life. Eric Edgar Cook was born on 25 February 1931 in Victoria Park suburb of Perth, the eldest of 3 children. Like the vast majority of people who go on to become serial killers, he had an unhappy childhood. His father was a violent alcoholic, and young Eric bore the brunt of his rages. He was regularly beaten for no apparent reason and found no break from his torment at school, where he was bullied due to his cleft palate and cleft lip. Operations and speech therapy to fix these disorders were not yet available. Consequently, for his entire life, Cook spoke in a low mumble. Academically gifted, he was nonetheless expelled from Subiaco Primary School at the age of 6 for stealing from a teacher's purse. After bouncing around a series of different schools and getting regularly caned for bad behavior at all of them, he found work as a delivery boy at the age of 14. He joined the local surf life-saving club, but was asked to leave, ostensibly because he suffered blackouts, but in reality because of a series of thefts from their lockers. One item Cook stole was a watch, which he had engraved to Cookie from the boys of Scarborough Junior Life-Saving Club. Well, that's weird. You steal something and then you dedicated it to yourself as a present? That takes a special kind of person. But he was a special person. Why are we into this shit? What is up with people and the morbid curiosity about mass murderers, serial killers, and just monsters in general? But you can't dismiss them as monsters. You know, a lot of people lived abused lives, and most of them turn out to be somewhat decent. Oh shit, I just got a sub from Sealhark. You gifted? Oh, thanks, Blue. Blue just... thank you, Blue. Oh, that means you gotta renew next month. Blue, you can't be spending your bonus on me, Blue. You got a family to support. You're my boy, Blue. Y'all gonna get me drinking up in here. Oh, okay. Anyways. By his mid-teens, Cook had begun committing petty crimes to supplement his meager wages, and this soon escalated to burglary, vandalism, and arson. Breaking into homes was no longer enough. Cook would slash the owner's clothes and bedding before setting fire to their house. The police caught up with him, and he was soon serving his first serious time in prison. He was paroled just 3 months into his 3-year sentence, because authorities were sympathetic to the young man's unfortunate family background. However, this conviction was to have disastrous consequences for Cook. He had always dreamt of joining the Australian Armed Services, but his criminal record meant he was now not eligible to do so. Once there was a man who... Anyways, a changed man. On release from prison, he appeared to be a changed man, rehabilitated by Methodist minister, the Reverend George Jenkins. He began attending services at his local Methodist church, joined the hockey team, and made new friends. The all too familiar compulsion to steal soon returned, however, and he was caught stealing from the church coffers. Ooh, that's a straight to hell crime. Anyways, he also now saw the criminal opportunities presented by the wealthy western suburbs around the Nedlands Methodist Church, where many parishioners had welcomed him into their homes. He avidly read the West Australian newspaper, checking wedding notices to find where and when local brides would be away on honeymoon so he could break into their homes. Later he would delight in reading reports of his murders and assaults in the same paper. At the age of 21, he managed to sign up for the Australian Army by lying on his application form and did well in training. He excelled especially in accurate shooting. However, his past criminal behavior was discovered, and Lance Corporal Cook received a dishonorable discharge. Well, I'm not particularly denominational. I just know that, it's more Protestant, non-denominational. Baptist, there's a bit too much singing, and some of the other, I don't know, dude. I don't go to church on any basis. I remember, I think my parents were going to a Presbyterian, and I was doing, volunteer work. We did the soup kitchen kind of thing for Christmas and Easter and all that goodness, and then I ended up having to do some community service, and I got a slot doing, yard work, gardening type work over there, and I was busting my butt, and apparently the ladies at the daycare that I never talked to, said that I creeped them out or something, and so they asked that I be told to leave. I'm like, oh my God, the free labor that doesn't talk to you is creeping you out. Very Christian of you to kick him out. But it's fine. Whatever. Fucking dickbag bitches. Ah. Huh. Okay. Desperate not to lose the fellowship he enjoyed in the armed services, Cook moved to Melbourne and joined the reserve army there. Again, he did well and was popular with other reservists. But once his conviction was discovered and he was discharged, he returned to Perth, telling anyone who would listen that he had just returned from having fought heroically in the Korean War. Well. Repetition, man. That's how memorization works for most people. He became a truck driver to make ends meet, and in 1953 he was back at the Methodist Church to marry a local waitress, Sarah Levin, with whom he would have 7 children. Okay. Despite this, he was arrested several times for voyeurism and prowling, and he also began to steal cars at night. It was easy to do because many residents left their cars unlocked with keys in the ignition. Holy fuck, really, Australians? Perth had not yet had its innocence taken from it. Back doors were left open and blinds were not drawn in. It was the perfect environment for a thief and voyeur. Finally, in 1955, Cook was sentenced to 2 years hard labor after crashing a stolen car. By this time, he was already on first-name terms with the local police, who believed him to be a petty criminal from an unfortunate background. They called him Cookie, and his glib sense of humor generally brought a grudging smile from those who arrested him. Oh, bro. I'm telling you. I mean, just because you're a criminal scumbag doesn't mean you can't make people laugh. Sometimes you gotta make people laugh. Oh, laugh! Alright, somebody's drinking all my damn whiskey. This is unacceptable. The demon inside. But after his release from prison, Cook's already tumultuous life began to spiral out of control. He would later sum up his motivation by saying, "I just wanted to hurt someone." In 1958, Cook selected 26-year-old Dutch immigrant Nell Schneider to be the first person he hurt. By now an expert car thief, he stole a car and rammed it into the mother of two as she cycled down Hillview Terrace in the Bentley suburb of Perth. She was badly injured, and the attack left her with severe epilepsy for the rest of her life. 2 months later, in November 1958, Cook broke into a house in the Applecross area, a favorite hunting ground of his. On this occasion, he did more than steal. He fractured the skull of a 15-year-old Molly McLeod as she slept in her bed. It was symptomatic of a trend of increasing levels of sadistic violence from Cook. One homeowner discovered Cook had broken in and left their goldfish boiling in a pan on the stove. Ugh. Weird. As Australian families gathered to celebrate Christmas, Cook committed another hit-and-run attack, this time on Kathy Bellis, while she was returning home from a late shift at work in Belmont. She was left with a fractured skull and spine, broken pelvis, leg, kneecap, and multiple lacerations. It was purely by good luck that she survived, but the evolution of Cook's violence would reach its murderous climax in just a few weeks into the new year. Oh, first murders. Penina Berkman, born Patricia Vinicombe, woke to find Cook burgling her apartment on the night of 30 January. The 33-year-old beautician tried to raise the alarm, but Cook caught hold of her and stabbed her to death with his stolen diving knife. Man, it wasn't even his knife, it was a stolen knife. Possession's 9/10 of the law. I swear to God, that's Walmart law. No. The divorcee's 8-year-old son was not with her that night because it was the school holidays. Her neighbor, Joan Evans, thought she heard a scream, but was told by her husband to go back to sleep. Cook was left with numerous scratches to his face, which he would explain away as having been caused by his mentally disabled son, Michael. And so Cook got away with his first murder, leaving only a body and a mystery for the police to try and solve. They would soon have more of both. Cook battered 17-year-old Alex Duncan in August, and then murdered for the second time in December. His victim was wealthy 22-year-old Gillian Brewer, heiress to the fortune of Australia's chocolate king, Sir Macpherson Robertson. The manner of her death was so horrific that a judge later refused to believe Cook's confession. On 20 December 1959, Cook watched as Gillian had sex with her boyfriend. Once the man had left, Cook broke into the flat in Stirling Highway, Cottesloe, where his victim was sleeping. Her gray poodle, asleep under the bed, woke her by barking at the intruder. Cook struck the woman just above her left eye with a hatchet he had stolen from a nearby garage. He then hit her twice in the throat. A further blow fractured her pubic bone and left a gaping wound between her legs. He then petted the dog to silence it and went outside to dispose of the murder weapon. Having done so, he returned to the flat and poured himself a glass of lemonade from the fridge. He calmly drank it whilst listening to the rattling sound of Gillian's every last gasp for air. Still conscious, she managed to ask, "Who is it?" as he walked into her bedroom carrying a pair of dressmaking scissors he had found in the living room. She was discovered by her boyfriend the next morning, lying on her back, with her left arm laying across her chest. Cook had stabbed her in the chest, abdomen, thighs, and buttocks with the scissors. Police found them wiped clean and carefully placed back on a tray in the living room. There were no fingerprints. Cook always wore women's leather gloves, and there was no sign of forced entry. Gillian, like many of her neighbors, had left her back door open. The West Australian headline on 21 December 1959 stated, "Only girl, 22, beaten to death in her flat." The people in Perth did not yet know the full, shocking details of the sadistic killer who was prowling their streets, and even the police had not yet connected the hit-and-runs and assaults with the two murders. Keep them guessing, man. Keep on changing up your MO. On 9 April 1960, Cook once again stole a car and mowed down a young woman with it. This time he knew his victim. It was 19-year-old Glenys Peake, whom he had given lifts several times on prior occasions. He chatted to her about his mentally retarded son, and she later described him as a nice guy. You'd never take him for a murderer. But Cook's terrible compulsion by now had a hold on him, and the random attacks continued. He later smashed his car into another woman, Jill Connell, a month later, seriously injuring her, and then plowed into a trio of pedestrians shortly afterwards. Because he was known to police as a habitual criminal, Cook was questioned about the murder of Jillian Brewer after his arrest for burglary later the same year. However, investigators believed he was just a petty thief and not a violent murderer. Cook spent another spell in prison for burglary, but there was nothing to connect him with any of the other crimes in Perth. Upon release, he soon resumed his one-man campaign of terror. In March 1962, Anne Whitsett awoke in her Nedlands apartment to find she could not breathe. Something had been wound tightly around her neck, and one of her arms was tied to the bed. Her cries alerted the neighbors, and Cook ran off. Peggy Fleury, a 25-year-old, was attacked in her North Cottesloe home in December of the same year. This time, Cook smashed his fist into her eye when she woke up as he sexually assaulted her. Again, her screams forced Cook to flee as the young woman's parents rushed to her aid. Then, on 26 January 1963, Cook burgled a house in Como and stole a .22 caliber rifle and ammunition. The infamous Australia Day attack would finally bring him the attention he so desperately craved. Exactly. Perth, overnight after Cook's Australia Day attack, stores sold out of guns and locks, and hundreds of dogs were bought or adopted from the local pounds. Nobody left their homes unlocked or walked the streets at night. The pressure on the police to find the killer was immense, and in response they launched the largest manhunt in Perth's history and massively increased their visible patrols. Cook had the good sense to lay low for a couple of weeks and made a show of being concerned about the killer on the loose. He ordered his wife never to open the door unless she heard him whistle, and for several nights he insisted the entire family sleep in the same room for safety. But secretly, Cook was reveling in his godlike power to instill fear and could not resist striking again. On 9 February, he plowed a stolen car into 17-year-old Rosemary Anderson and one of the few women walking unescorted on the streets of Perth at this time. She had stormed off after an argument with her boyfriend, John Button, who found her lying in the road moments later. He put her in his car and drove her to the hospital, but it was too late. Cook had killed again. At the time, police believed that it was Button who had mowed her down, and he was convicted of her manslaughter. He served 5 years of a 10-year sentence, and his conviction was finally quashed only in 2002. God damn! That's a long time to be thought you're guilty of something. Although, to be fair, on the books, I think Florida says felony, fleeing, and looting, but let's not worry about my past. John Button was a collateral victim of Cook's actions. His next actual victim met her death just a week after Rosemary Anderson was killed. Social worker Lucy Madrill was found dead on her neighbor's lawn on 16 February. The 24-year-old's murder was not connected with Cook's previous crimes because his method of killing had changed. This time, he strangled his victim. Then he dragged Lucy's dead body out of her bedroom and across the lawn at the back of her property, through a hedge to a neighboring property. There, he sexually assaulted her. A whiskey bottle that he had inserted into her vagina was left in the crook of her left arm. The crime baffled the police, but did not appear to be related to the earlier shooting spree. On 10 August, however, the police and press alike were certain that the Australia Day shooter had struck once more. University student Shirley MacLeod was shot in her home in the Dalkeith area of Perth. She had been babysitting the property when Cook took aim with his .22 rifle. And this Cook guy, he had to be stopped. But they couldn't link the crimes. Oh, lucky break. 6 days later, the beleaguered police got an expected break. Not an unexpected break, an expected break? Okay. An elderly couple had been out walking on Rookwood Street in the suburb of Mount Lawley, a few miles east of the last crime scene. They stopped to admire the flowering Geraldton wax bushes that are native to Western Australia. and suddenly noticed a rifle hidden amidst the foliage. They notified the police, who took the rifle away and performed a ballistics test on it. The results confirmed that it was the weapon used to kill Shirley MacLeod. Since nobody had seen the person who hid the weapon, the police decided to set a trap and wait until the owner showed up to retrieve it. The West Australian newspaper agreed to run a story stating that the police were going to redouble their efforts in the Applecross and Mount Pleasant areas. Cook read the story and believed it was safe to return to his weapon cache in Mount Lawley, some way further to the east of the police presence. In the early hours of 1 September 1963, he slowly pulled up in a Holden sedan, checking the coast was clear. He did not spot the two detectives hiding behind camouflage netting. He was arrested by armed officers as he pulled the dummy rifle from the hedge. They searched him and found he was wearing women's gloves and had a pair of black women's panties in his pocket. He later admitted he had intended to use the gun to kill again that very night. It was Father's Day and his children were waiting at his house to give him his present. He never came home again. It was a group of police officers who next arrived at Cook's family's front door. Well, there's the bastard right there. You see him? Do you see him? That's the face of a fucking weirdo with panties in his pocket. Ladies, if you have extra panties, my pockets are empty. Just kidding. I'm just kidding. No, I'm not. So for some reason, my left nostril decided it's not going to work at all tonight. And the whiskey's not clearing it up for some reason. Maybe you're supposed to snort it. Oh, no? Okay. Cook rapidly confessed to shooting MacLeod, but he insisted he had nothing to do with the Australia Day killings. Despite privately being sure they had their men, police had little to tie the suspect to the earlier crimes. They decided to pander to his ego, taking him out for a chicken curry at the historic Albion Hotel at Cottesloe, close to where several of his most infamous crimes occurred. There, beneath the Tiffany chandeliers, Detective Max Baker laid it on the line to Cook, telling him he was going to hang for killing MacLeod, so he may well tell the truth about the other crimes too. When he regained his composure, Cook nodded and agreed, saying, "I'm the bloke you're looking for." Oh, wow. I didn't realize Nicolas Cage had panties on his... You know, I've seen bits and pieces of Raising Arizona, but I've never sat and watched it in one go. I know it was one of the last movies Tex Cobb was in. I think it was Tex Cobb. He was the biker dude. I loved him in that movie Uncommon Valor with I think it was Uncommon Valor with Gene Hackman and Patrick Swayze. Can't remember anybody else in the movie, but that was a good movie. I think I watched it as a kid, so my taste of what was good then versus now might be somewhat different. I hope, at least. Then it was Cook's turn to shock the police. He not only confessed to the shootings, but informed them that he was also responsible for the hit-and-run incidents and assaults too. One of the major problems the interrogators faced that the two crimes that Cook confessed to had already been solved as far as they were concerned. But John Button was behind bars for killing his girlfriend, Rosemary Anderson, and a deaf-mute man by the name of Daryl Beamish had been convicted of the brutal murder of Jillian Brewer. The police decided that Cook, a notorious liar, was trying to make himself look more important than he really was, and refused to believe his confession. Tragically, Daryl Beamish would remain in prison for 15 years, and it would be a further 24 years before his conviction was finally overturned. Holy fuckballs. So that guy was convicted around 68, and I'm guessing around fucking 92 he was finally acquitted. That's nuts. Can you imagine? just because it's a law doesn't mean it's just. And man, our justice system in general, not just for America, but for Australia and just most of the world, it's fucked. Oh, okay, wow. Okay, the Cook legacy. In total, Cook confessed to 8 murders and 14 attempted murders, plus more than 250 burglaries, each of which he managed to recollect with exceptional clarity. 250 burglary. Jesus, and you remember... Fuck. I don't remember what I had for breakfast. Oh, wait, I didn't have breakfast today. He was eventually charged with respect to the murder of student John Sturkey. The first to die in the Australia Day shootings. At his trial, he pleaded not guilty on the grounds of insanity. Cook hoped to avoid the death penalty, but the jury rejected his claim to be of unsound mind, and he was found guilty of willful murder. On 27 November 1963, he was sentenced to death. Okay, so here's my thing, right? The insanity plea. No sane person, by at least my definition of sane, would continue to escalate their crimes to serial murder. I mean, at some degree, he is somewhat insane. But at the same time, I understand people want justice at the end of a bullet or a rope or injection or electrocution or gas or whatever. I get that. I personally, if you find a person guilty beyond the shadow of a doubt for the crime of murder, whether it's 1 or 100 or more, you know, they should be dealt with swiftly. But at the same time, there needs to be a massive amount of proof to convict. You know what I'm saying? Like, not just eyewitness testimony, but we're talking about video and DNA evidence as well. Like, it needs... I don't know. There's no good way to put it. You know, some people raise the argument of, you know, no capital punishment as far as execution is concerned because they don't think the state should be, you know, blah, blah, blah. But I also don't believe that somebody should be in jail for the rest of their natural years for the simple fact and reason that it costs money to keep them alive. Which, I've got this whole spiel about how I think prisons should be 100% self-sufficient. If they don't grow and provide all they wear and eat and consume and so on and so forth, then they need to produce products to pay for all the stuff that they use just to keep the prison running and the prisoners alive. And, you know, I think prisons should not be for-profit organizations, but they should be at the very least self-sufficient, one way, shape, or form or another. That's just me and my personal opinion, among many things. Oh yeah, she's the beast that's sleeping. Here. Pat, 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 pat. There we go. She is the champion sleeper in this house. Lord knows she gets more sleep than I do. Then she has her little nightmares sometimes where she's like, boop, 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 boop. Shut the fuck up. But I don't do that. I don't want to wake her up, right? Yeah. It's okay, baby. Lay down. You're good. I was just talking about your little lucid nightmares that you have that require you to make fucking noise. Oh, I wonder what that little strobe thing is all about. Stop it, little strobe thing. Anyway. Where were we? There is no appeal against the sentence, though Cook had the right to one. On death row in Fremantle Prison, he was reunited with Reverend George Jenkins, the Methodist minister who tried to rehabilitate him many years earlier. Cook told him that he felt he deserved to hang and expressed his concern with two innocent men were in prison for crimes he had committed. He swore on a Bible that he killed Gillian Brewster and Rosemary Anderson, and offered to testify to the fact under oath in court. But judges in the appeal courts decided the offer was just a tactic to postpone his execution. Eric Edgar Cook would be the 154th and final man to hang in the Fremantle prison. As was the custom, He was woken at 5:30 a.m. on Monday morning and transferred to his cell number 12 to the condemned cell, ready to be hanged at 8 a.m. He was offered a glass of whiskey and allowed a brief few final words with his chaplain, George Jenkins. He had bidden his wife goodbye in the pale blue visiting room the day before, saying, "I'll never see you again, Sal, because you'll be up there and I'll be down there." As the prison struck 8 a.m. on 26 October 1964, a hood was placed over the head of the prisoner, number 29050, and he went to his death with quiet resignation. Cook's wife Sally stayed with neighbors and the children had the day off school. A handwritten note from the Cook family's front door asked the media to leave the family alone. They were already dealing with one bereavement. Their eldest son, Michael, drowned while Eric was on death row. Despite this, a brick was thrown through the window and dozens of abusive letters sent to them. 50 years later, Sally Cook told the West Australian paper, "The best thing that ever happened to me was the day they hanged him." Well, shit the bed. You hear that? I mean, that's one way to get a divorce, right? Divorce. I mean, in Nation of Islam, you just need to say the word divorce 3 times, and it's official. I will say it the 3rd time. Well, that was relatively short. That was 16 pages, something like that. What a fucking... it's just... you know, us human beings, we're complicated plants. We require water and nutrients and sunlight, and we're just a collection of liquids and chemicals and electronic, actions. And sometimes, if 1 or 2 things are off, you can be the next Cook or whatever. It could be an accident. It could be an abusive childhood. It could just be a simple case of neglect. Don't look at me like that. Anyways, Chapter 3. Peter Kürten, the Vampire of Dusseldorf. Now, this is the first one, okay? We're on our 3rd chapter. This is literally the first killer that I've actually heard of. But I don't remember much. I think I read like maybe a chapter about Peter Dusseldorf. That was probably the Means, Motive, Opportunity book that I read. Okay, anyways. Aren't you afraid? So many terrible things have already happened here. Hubertine Moirer didn't answer. The man who had approached and spoken to her was a stranger, albeit a respectable-looking one. The question didn't require a response. In 1929, in Dusseldorf, after dark, everybody was afraid. A man known as the Hammer Maniac was terrorizing the city and had already killed 6 people that year. One of them at this very spot just 2 weeks earlier. The 34-year-old quickened her stride along the isolated Hellweg, the main road through Flingern district, on Dusseldorf's eastern fringe, eyes fixed straight ahead. Seconds later, she was felled by a vicious hammer blow to the skull. More such blows followed as she lay unconscious on the ground in a pool of blood. Clara Wanders, a prostitute working on a street around the corner, was attacked just moments later. The killer used such force during his assault on her that the head of his hammer broke off. Unlike the vast majority of his previous victims, the 2 women both survived the attacks. Their testimonies were rushed off to the man leading the hunt for the maniac, Germany's most famous detective, Ernst Genat. Genat was nicknamed Buddha chiefly because of his vast 135 kilograms, 297 pounds weight, but because of his wisdom too. He headed up Germany's newly established Zentrale Mordinspektion, or Central Murder Squad. The establishment of such a unit was one of many innovations that Genat brought to German crime fighting. He also pioneered the use of forensics and criminal profiling. Indeed, it was Genat who first coined the term Serienmörder, serial murderer, in 1930. The word was created to describe the men Genat had pursued through the dark streets of Dusseldorf, Peter Kürten. I don't know what's up with that little flicker thing that goes off every now and then. I'm assuming it has something to do with the zeros and ones of computer speak, but it's weird. Hopefully it's not too distracting. You guys are intrigued by the hammer maniac of Dusseldorf. Childhood poverty and violence. Peter Kürten was born in 1883 in Köln-Mülheim, Cologne, into a large and desperately poor family that had shared a single room. When his father was not in prison, he would beat his wife and children during alcoholic rages, often threatening them with a knife. He forced his wife and 13-year-old daughter to have sex with him, often in front of the rest of the family. Peter learnt by example and had sexual relations with at least one of his sisters. His parents later divorced, a rare and extreme course of action in Germany at this time. Wow. Never heard anything like that before. Jesus Christ. In the same building as the Curtins lived a dog catcher who soon befriended Peter. The 9-year-old boy eagerly watched as the man explained how to masturbate and torture dogs. Fuck! Okay, damn it. Okay, anyways. Before long, Curtin was experimenting with both sex and death himself in the local fields and stables. He progressed from cutting the heads off dogs and geese to stabbing sheep as he had intercourse with them. At the age of 13, he had an orgasm while strangling a squirrel that was biting him, and from then on, he became incapable of enjoying sex unless it involved pain and mistreatment. How the fuck do you have... What? Oh, he had an orgasm while strangling a squirrel. It didn't say he was having sex with it. I'm like, how small is your dick? But... Wow. Okay, wow. Jesus, man. I don't know. Those squirrel bites can be pretty fucking vicious. I had to reread it because I wasn't sure. Now you guys know, and you can never unknow. Just don't let those squirrels bite you. You might nut yourself. Fuck. He ran away from the family home soon afterwards, sleeping in vans and stealing in order to support himself. By the age of 15, he was serving his first prison sentence for theft. By then, chillingly, he had already managed to get away with the first of his murders. At the age of just 9, he drowned 2 boys whilst playing on a raft with them on the Rhine River. He was also a committed arsonist, confessing to 4 such crimes in 1904, though in reality he had committed many more. He was in and out of prison several times between 1905 and 1913, mostly for petty crimes. In total, he would spend more than 20 of his 47 years in prison. It was during one brief period of release that he committed his first documented murder as an adult. It began as a straightforward robbery. Kürten broke into an apartment above an inn on Wolfstrasse, Cologne, in May 1913. He found 10-year-old Christine Klein asleep in her bedroom there. As Christine's parents served customers in the inn below, Kürten throttled the child in her bed until her fingernails ceased scratching at his hands and her body went limp. Then he sexually assaulted her, dragged her head to the edge of the bed, and cut her throat. He later described the delight it gave him to watch her blood spurt in great arcs over his hand and to listen to it drip onto a mat beside her bed. Though he dropped a handkerchief with the initials PK at the scene, the identity of Christine's killer would not become known for another 17 years. Wow. In that same single year of freedom, he also attempted to strangle 2 women in remote locations before breaking into another house and strangling a 16-year-old girl into unconsciousness. He wounded a man and a woman in 2 separate axe attacks and attempted to butcher a sleeping child in a third. In addition, he launched numerous arson attacks, later expressing his disappointment that none of them resulted in anyone being burnt alive. Kürten evaded detection for all of these crimes. Man, this guy's a fucking charmer, isn't he? He's a squirrel nutter. Squirrel nutter! I gotta top off my whiskey. It's running low. Somebody done drank most of it. Rude as hell. Ooh! we lost somebody. Who'd we lose? This is why we can't have nice things, people. Tuesday. Fuck. Why is the weekend gotta be so damn far away? Oh. But for one thing, even Peter Kürten could not escape was the outbreak of World War. In 1914, he was called up to fight for his country, but the slaughter of trench warfare was not the kind of violence that thrilled him. He soon deserted, and as a result was sentenced to 7 years hard labor. His first lengthy prison sentence as 70 million combatants across the world fought one another to a bloody stalemate in the First World War, Kürten languished in a solitary confinement in Brieg prison in modern-day Poland. There he achieved orgasms by dreaming of atrocities, slitting up somebody's stomach, and how the public would be horrified. He read voraciously of the crimes of Jack the Ripper in London, fantasized about becoming such a notorious killer, or the chief detective who rids a city of such a scourge. He was released in 1921 into a German society that had been ravaged by war and was desperate to heal its wounds and restore pride after humiliating defeat. But Kürten was bent on wreaking revenge on a society he believed had brutalized him unjustly. Especially that fucking squirrel. Fuck. If you guys could either comment or refresh your streams, I'd appreciate it, because reasons, because that's how that works. If you don't say something, they're like, you're not a fucking viewer. And I'm like, why would you do that? And they're like, because fuck you, that's why. What you smiling at, dog? What you smiling at? You winking at me? Yeah? You gonna lay down? You gonna lay down? That's a good girl. That's a good girl. Thank you. Thank you, good girl. For a short period, Kürten appeared to settle down. He found permanent work in a factory and met and married a friend of his sister who had also served prison time for shooting a former fiancée after he jilted her. Despite his marriage and a newfound financial stability, however, Kürten continued to mistreat women violently in order to obtain his sexual gratification, and he was briefly jailed in 1926. Upon his release, nothing changed. He forced his wife to have sex when she didn't want it and openly carried on affairs with other women, beating and choking them as he had intercourse with them. He threatened them with death if they went to the police. Eventually, 2 terrified servant girls reported Kürten's assaults on them, and he was jailed again for 2 months and then a further 6 months in 1927 and 1928. What the hell, man? Why you gotta be so loud, music? This catalog of violent offenses and murders, terrible though they were, served only as a prelude to the horrors that Peter Kürten would unleash in 1929. It was in that terrible year that he finally delivered on a promise to wreak revenge on society, and stain the dark streets of Düsseldorf red with blood. 1929 attacks. Sometime around 6 o'clock, I saw a woman going along the Bertstrasse, and I went up to her and shouted, "Stop!" So begins Kürten's own account of his infamous murder spree. The woman he bumped into on 3 February 1929 was Maria Kuhn, although Kürten would only come to learn that by eagerly poring over the press reports of the attack later. Beyond wishing her good evening, he didn't speak to her before stabbing her 24 times with a pair of heavy Zollingen Emperor scissors. I'm glad they gave us the brand. I left her lying unconscious. I heard cries for help, and I made my way quickly down the Hellweg. He later said, Maria survived, but could give no detailed description of the man who attacked her on that dark winter evening. As she fought for her life in the hospital, her assailant revisited the scene of the crime several times, spontaneously achieving orgasms as he remembered what he had done there. My gosh, what a fucking weirdo. There we go. 5 days later, Kürten would lead 8-year-old Rosa Ohliger by the hand near Kettwiger Strasse to a spot where the flickering gas lamps left large areas of the street in shadow. Her body was found under a fence by construction workers the following day. She had been stabbed 13 times and then set on fire. I wanted to increase the general indignation by setting light to the victim, Curtin explained later, clearly concerned that the murder of a child would generate insufficient indignation on its own. Only 3 nights passed in peace before 45-year-old mechanic Rudolf Scheer became the serial killer's next victim on 12 February. He had the misfortune to bump into Curtin whilst drunk, sometime around 8 o'clock in the evening. He was repeatedly stabbed in the neck and head, then rolled lifeless into a ditch. By next morning, the police had cordoned off the scene just off the Helweg near the first attack had happened. Again, Curtin returned to the spot to enjoy the outrage he had caused. A suspicious detective asked him how he had come to learn of the crime so soon, and he claimed that an acquaintance had telephoned him about it. It would be over a year before the police got the chance to talk to the killer face to face once again. In the meantime, they arrested a 20-year-old local man with learning difficulties by the name of Johann Strasberg. He rapidly admitted he was responsible for 2 incidents in which women were attacked with the noose. Under pressure, he falsely confessed to Curtin's crimes too, and the police believed the case to be solved. But while Strasberg was confined in a mental asylum, 3 people were stabbed with a dagger in separate attacks on the night of 21 August. Anna Goldhausen was stabbed in the left breast as she walked along Erkrater Strasse just after 10 p.m. Then Olga Monto was stabbed twice in the back on the same street shortly afterwards. At around 2:30 a.m., Curtin watched an ambulance take away his 3rd victim of the night, Gustav Kornblum, who he had stabbed in the back a little earlier. I mean, sometimes you just gotta run around the dark stabbing people. I don't condone this behavior, but, you know, sometimes you gotta cut a motherfucker. Don't do that. It was not yet obvious to the police that Strasberg was not the killer they were hunting. The weapon used in the attacks on 21 August was a dagger, not the scissors used in the previous attacks. It seemed to them that an entirely separate maniac was now on the loose. Then, on 25 August, the bodies of 5-year-old Gertrude Hamacher and her 14-year-old foster sister, Louise Lenzen, were found on allotments close to their home in the Flea district of the city. Both had been strangled and stabbed before having their throats cut. On the same day as their bodies were found, 26-year-old Gertrude Schulte was taken to hospital with 13 stab wounds after being attacked near Neuss, just outside Düsseldorf. A man using the name Fritz Baumgart had tried to have sex with her, and when she told him that she would rather die, he replied, "Well, die then," before plunging a knife into her. On Monday, 30 September, another body was found, this time in a meadow on the outskirts of Düsseldorf. Domestic servant Ida Reuter had been beaten to death with a hammer. The change of weapon led the police to assume that this case was not related to the others, and yet another killer was now on the loose. This new killer struck again on 12 October. Unemployed servant girl Elizabeth Dorier was found unconscious in the Flingern district at first light and later died of hammer wounds to her left temple. Journalists from around the world now descended on Düsseldorf to cover the unfolding hunt. The panicked public deluged the police with tip-offs, often by post, and hoaxers wrote letters claiming to be the killer. Gannat's team had to sift through 13,000 letters in the course of the inquiry. An additional problem was false confessions. No fewer than 200 people gave themselves up to the police, claiming to be the killer. The popular crime monthly Criminal magazine, the Criminal Magazine, summed up the mood. Düsseldorf is at fever pitch. The Rhineland is trembling with excitement. Germany is tumbling these days from one sensation to another. A mass murderer is playing with the city. Oh, Curtin, who had dreamt for so long of exactly this kind of attention, was happy to play along with the dark game that the press had identified. The day after he killed Elizabeth Dorier, he sent a letter to the police in which he marked out the location of a further body they had yet to discover. They visited the spot they believed the letter referred to, but found nothing. It was 2 weeks later that Hubertine Murer was attacked by a well-spoken man as she walked along the Hellweg in the same area, by the man who first asked her, "Aren't you afraid?" On Saturday 9th, November, the body of 5-year-old Gertrude Alberman was found amidst the rubble beside a factory yard on the outskirts of Düsseldorf. She had been strangled, stabbed, and sexually assaulted. With one or more killers clearly still on the loose and the entire city now engulfed in terror, the elite squad from Berlin was sent to Düsseldorf to help. The elite squad, look out! One of Curtin's recurring fantasies was that people of Düsseldorf would stage a torchlit procession in his honor after he rescued the city from a monstrous killer. The man tasked with saving the city for real, Ernst Gennat, arrived in Düsseldorf with no clear leads to follow. The local police were disorganized and poorly trained. Gennat brought to the inquiry more than just his Daimler-Benz Mordauto, murder car, which converted into a mobile office to record clues in detail directly at a crime scene. More importantly, he brought experience of hunting and capturing a serial killer like Curtin. Though his first crimes were not connected by the police, the body count in 1921 rose. As the body count in 1929 rose, it became apparent that one man was responsible for several of the incidents. Gennat had interviewed the werewolf of Hanover, Fritz Harman, who had been captured 4 years earlier after murdering 24 men, often by biting through their throats. Okay. He had investigated that Berlin butcher Karl Grossman, who had murdered and cannibalized at least 26 people before hanging himself in a police cell whilst awaiting execution. Indeed, it was such cases as these that had persuaded Gennat of the need for a specialized homicide unit in Germany. But the Düsseldorf case was different, unlike anything even the ace detective Gennat had seen before. Harman's victims had all been homosexuals. Grossman killed vagrants and prostitutes. The Düsseldorf killer had already murdered women, children, and a man, and attacked many others, all apparently at random. There appeared to be no pattern, and as a result, the then much favored method of using undercover police as bait for a killer was useless. Gennat was famous for his methodical approach to collecting evidence, but he was operating in a world before DNA testing. The semen collected from the underwear of Rosa Ohlinger told him that only that the motive for the crimes was sexual. It gave no clue about the identity of the offender. Oh, that tastes like whiskey. Rye, to be specific. The police had tried to keep the latest hammer attacks quiet from the press, concerned that the public would become hysterical if they learned of even more victims. In private, also Gennat railed against the mass psychosis that appeared to have gripped the city. He began to use the press to entrap the killer, but aware that the perpetrator of these crimes was probably following the investigation in the papers. At a series of press conferences, Gennat compared the Düsseldorf killer to Jack the Ripper, saying London's infamous murderer was a mere beginner compared with his Düsseldorf disciple. Doubtless, Curtin, who had long idolized Jack, was delighted. But Gennat was determined that, unlike Jack the Ripper, the Düsseldorf killer would not evade justice. A reward of 15,000 German marks, around 40,000 pounds or 62,000 US dollars, was offered for information that led to the capture of the killer. A vast sum in Germany during the Great Depression. Ganot stated his belief that the suspect would be undone by his love of publicity. It may have been a deliberate ploy on the detective's part to try and goad the killer into contacting him directly. By this time, Curtin, frustrated at the lack of coverage of his latest crimes, had begun communicating with the press. In early November, Curtin wrote to one of the newspapers that had been most vocal in its criticisms of the investigation thus far. He enclosed another map showing the location of the same undiscovered body he had referenced previously. Across the map was written, "Murder at Popendell." In the place marked with a stone lies a buried corpse. The police, now under Ganot's control, scoured the entire area and located a straw hat and a set of keys found by a farmer in his field in Popendell. Photographs were published in the papers, and a woman came forward claiming they belonged to her housekeeper, Maria Hahn, who had been missing since 11 August. Soon after, the police found the location referenced in the mysterious map. As the author had claimed, a body was buried there. It was Maria Hahn. She had suffered multiple stab wounds to her forehead and body. You don't stab the forehead? I mean, it's bloody, but unless you get a through and through, you're just hurting them. You're not really... Okay, anyways. For the rest of the year, the police searched for the missing handbags of victims Dorier and Reuter for Schulte's purse. A mannequin dressed in Dorier's clothes was toured around Dusseldorf's cabarets and dance halls. Graphologist Dr. Hans Schneikert examined the hundreds of letters received and decided that 2 were written by the person who had written the November map letter. But the trail went cold and the attack stopped as winter closed in. I mean, you know, when it's cold outside, you don't want to be going out there stabbing people randomly because it's cold outside. Oh, don't you hate that when it's cold outside? You can't go outside stabbing people? They would begin again, however, in spring 1930. In Grafenberg Woods, on the eastern fringes of the city, 3 women survived rape and strangulation attempts. Hildegard Eid on 23 February and Marianne Del Santo and Irma Becker in March. In April, 5 similar attacks were reported by women. All the victims survived to tell their tales. Then, on 30 April in the same woods, Charlotte Ulrich was attacked with a hammer and left for dead. On walking in a pool of her own blood, she staggered to a nearby railway station to get help. She was wanted by the police for theft, so did not contact them. Instead, she recuperated without medical attention at the home of 2 benevolent strangers. Incredibly, despite having a severely fractured skull, she made a full recovery. I mean, that her will to survive is impeccable. That's nuts. When she finally did come forward to give details of the horrific attack, she was jailed for 3 months. By then, Curtin had struck again. The Budlik attack. Maria Budlik was waiting at Dusseldorf train station and getting increasingly concerned. A woman she had met on the train, Frau Brucker, who was supposed to meet her in order to help her find accommodation. She hadn't turned up and it was getting late. Dusseldorf was the last place on earth where any woman would want to be alone and without a place to stay. She is approached by a well-dressed and polite man who offered to show her to the city's local women's hostel. As he led her through the city's Volksgarten Park, however, she became afraid and refused to go any further. The man became angry with her and he told her she was being ridiculous. Attracted by his raised voice, a second man approached, and Maria Budlik's would-be escort disappeared into the shadows. The second man informed her she was right to be worried. The women's hostel was in the opposite direction to the way she was being led. She gratefully accepted his offer to show her the right way. The man who took her into the park was never traced. The man who escorted her back out of the park was Peter Curtin. Whoa, wait, say what? Okay, well, here's some pictures of Curtin. Oh, I know it's tiny. Bear with me. Penis. You see that? That's the well-dressed feller. They talked en route, and Budlik accepted Curtin's offer to return to his 3-bedroom house in Metzmaner Strasse, where he and his wife would prepare her something to eat. Budlik was led instead to an empty 1-bedroom attic flat where Curtin gave her milk, bread, and ham. From there, he escorted her onto a tram to take her to the hostel. The tram headed out of town and got off near some woods. When Budlik was told there was a shortcut to the hostel. In the woods, Curtin raped her whilst holding her throat. For some reason, which even he himself could not later explain, he did not kill her. Instead, he asked her if she could remember where he lived. And when she said no, he let her go. It was not as Detective Gannat had predicted, Curtin's thirst for publicity that led to his capture, but this single, inexplicable act of mercy. A traumatized Budlik wrote a letter to the woman she was due to meet at the station, explaining what happened, but she misspelt the woman's name, and the letter ended up in the hands of a woman named Brugman rather than Brooker. Frau Brugman took the letter to the police, who later tracked Budlik down. On 21 May 1930, Budlik took them back to the house of the man who had attacked her. From his balcony at number 71 Mettmanner Strasse, Peter Curtin recognized Budlik and immediately slipped out of the house, eluding the 2 detectives who were waiting outside. But Curtin must have known that he was now on borrowed time. On Friday, 23 May, detectives went to the workplace of Curtin's wife and informed them that her husband had arranged to meet her at the church of St. Rochus at 3 p.m. the next day. And then she dropped a bombshell. The day before, he had confessed to her that he was the Dusseldorf mass murderer. I mean, sometimes even a monster can have a moment of clarity and or need to confess. Whew. On Saturday, 24 May, the police surrounded the church square and arrested Curtin without a struggle. He immediately confessed. He recalled in vivid detail each of his crimes and even admitted to drinking the blood of his victims. Over the course of the following week, he led police to a bush in a park where he claimed to have hidden the 2 hammers he used in the attacks. They were not there, but a police appeal soon resulted in 2 local boys handing them in. Curtin also pointed out where he had hidden the handbags of Reuter and Dorier. It was only then that Gannat was fully satisfied that he had finally caught the killer. We got our man. Oh, we got our man, yeah? Is this what a murderer looks like? That was the question asked by one court reporter when he and the general public finally got a look at the man who confessed to the crimes. At that time, it was generally believed that criminals were primitive, subhuman types whose physical features were reminiscent of apes. Curtin was dapper, handsome, immaculately dressed. He was normal. The trial opened 13 April 1931, nearly a year after Curtin's arrest. The courtroom was the drill hall of Dusseldorf Police Headquarters, presided over by 3 judges. The dock had been hastily constructed for the occasion and resembled a wooden cage. A room next door was crammed with grim exhibits. Several of the victims' shattered skulls and various weapons Curtin used in the crimes, and articles of clothing worn by the victims. He was charged with 10 murders and 7 attempted murders. 40 arson cases he had confessed two were omitted. He was found guilty of 9 of the murders and sentenced to death by guillotine for each. Weimar Germany had not carried out an execution since 1928. As he awaited sentence, Curtin was bombarded with love letters and requests for autographs, as well as hate mail expressing the view that he deserved a long, lingering death and would shortly suffer for eternity in hell. He petitioned the Prussian Justice Minister for a reprieve in June, but the petition was declined. He was executed the day after he received the news, on Thursday, 2 July 1931. One of the questions Curtin asked the psychiatrist who interviewed him was whether he would be able to hear the sound of his own blood gush when the blade severed his head. He remarked that for him, this would be the ultimate thrill. Killers on display. The Cannibal Werewolf of Hanover, Fritz Harmond, is featured Where's Waldo style on the local tourist board's annual advent calendar, and his story is told to tourists on the city's guided tours. Other killers seem to forgotten, lost in the passage of time, or perhaps we forget them because we need to. So terrible are their crimes. Who now, outside of the former Prussian town of Münsterberg, now Ziebig, Poland, remembers Karl Denke, the man who killed at least 42 people and turned their skins into belts and braces. It was not Denke, but Peter Kürten, the vampire of Dusseldorf, who was destined to become the poster boy of evil in the Weimar Republic of the 1920s. And that is exactly the way Kürten would have wanted it. Indeed, he planned it that way from the start. Denke was a social outcast with a low IQ, a loner who preyed on vagrants, and those marginalized by society. Kürten was one of us, intelligent and eloquent, and immaculately turned out. He was immortalized, first of all, in director Fritz Lang's classic 1931 film M, at the time perceived as too shocking and controversial to be shown in Dusseldorf. Later, Detective Gennat and the psychiatrist Karl Berg both wrote about their involvement in the case, ensuring that Kürten would haunt the world from beyond the grave. It was only much later, however, that the moniker the Vampire of Dusseldorf stuck. Kürten haunts not just from the page, but from behind a perspex screen. Perspex? I don't know what the fuck is perspex? Okay. His severed, mummified head revolves on a hook in a display case in Ripley's Believe It or Not Museum in Wisconsin, United States. Doctors examined it after his death in order to try to find out if some kind of abnormality had caused his murderous fury. The brain was found to be normal. Well, you know, brains and whatnot. I'll tell you what. Oh, good God, how many pages is this one? 16 pages. I'm not doing another 16 pages. This is ridiculous. So on that note, fucking Vampire of Dusseldorf. What, did we have fun tonight, kids? I think we did. What do you think, dog? Yeah, you have a good nap? Fuck, I'm jealous. I had a big nap today, though. Look at them TVs. Look at them TVs. That's a pretty baby. Anyways, thanks for tuning in, guys. I think I'm going to call it here. I will be back tomorrow night around 8:30, 9 o'clock, and we'll do a little bit of painting. We'll have ourselves a little Bobby Ross Wednesday. I'll talk at you guys later. Deuces. Where are you going? You get excited the second I say bye. She knows. She's smart as fuck. Why are you so damn smart? Huh? Who do you think you are, Miss Smarty Pants? She's smart, dog.